Our next speaker is from Telestream, and we had a question in this session about how PTZ Optics cameras integrated with Wirecast. And for the next 40 minutes or so, you're going to learn all about Wirecast and how to do multi-camera shoots in Wirecast. So with that, I'd like to pass things over to Shane Scrimmager. Shane, are you out there? Yes, you are. I see you just signed
Hello,
on.
everyone. Yeah, thanks
Hello.
for having me.
All right. Well, if we have as many questions as we did last time, we'll keep things moving pretty quickly. Shane, do you want me to wait until the end of your presentation for questions or just interrupt you when something's appropriate?
You know, feel free to hop in because there may be some workflow questions and we can iron them out on the fly. So feel free to hop in when the question or, kind of jump in when the questions arrive. I'm totally okay with that.
Sounds great. And I'll turn my camera off and we'll pass things over to you.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. What I thought we'd do today is walk through a basic 2-camera shoot. And this actually is a great segue from Paul's presentation because we can kind of take some of those key points and some of those questions and address them in the Wirecast application themselves. So today, we're going to go over the Wirecast application, but specifically paired with our Wirecast gear units. And just to introduce, for those who don't know our Wirecast gear units, essentially it's our Windows 10 enterprise computer, except that we had an open slate to create what we want. So we went with more of a server grade, basically streaming designed computer. But we got to choose the form factor. We got to choose the, everything from the processor, capture cards, the connectivity, everything specifically, from our marketing group, QA, sales, we all came together and we sat down and we put together what we think is not only the most functional and reliable streaming source, but also easy to use and the flexibility in connecting your devices. So we're going to go ahead and hop into the Wirecast application itself. And in here, before we jump into how to add shots and kind of the nuts and bolts of Wirecast, let's talk about shot composition, because this is really where a lot of the flexibility of Wirecast is going to live. And besides like having a preview window and a live window, which is key. So not only are you producing and having your live output, but you have what I call kind of a safety preview window where you can be building and composing your next shot before you take that live. So besides the preview and live window, basic composition in Wirecast with the 5 layers is you have the ability to layer or compose your shots. So layer 1, if we just remove these right now, layer 1, a logo. Layer 2, lower thirds, titling, any kind of graphic overlay, but separated from the logo because you may not want that lower third or that text overlay the whole time, and you maybe want to remove it, but keep your logo. I always put my visuals on layer 3. Therefore, I have a couple layers to kind of put my graphic overlays, but I always have my visuals on layer 3, whether that be a camera, a presentation, a guest, a PDF, JPEG, anything on that, what I call a visual video playback on layer 3. Layer 4 is where I let my audio live. And key point on having audio separated from maybe, for instance, this camera has embedded audio, which is great. But as soon as I switch away from that camera, I've essentially cut off that audio. So I would add that camera again as an audio source below. So no matter where I switched, I could have that audio source play through all of my visuals. So just kind of a quick audio point, have whatever your main audio source or your audio sources on layer 4. So with composition, adding shots. And here's really where Wirecast, one of the greatest points of Wirecast is ease of connecting your devices. So this logo, if you were to add, it's just a media file and I browse disk for my, our logo, which is just basically a PNG. These lower thirds, again, adding a shot, going to overlays, and it's one of our preset. We have over 40 preset lower thirds, pictures and pictures, slates for you to use. And this is just right here under titles. Adding visual sources. Another place where, we've pressed, we got to make this as easy as we can. So physically connected sources, HDMI, SDI, USB, network connected sources, IP cams, NDI sources, pulling in RTSP, sources. They're all available here, as well as video playback. Anything that you've created you want to bring in. So again, we'll add sources. Any physically connected sources will be here. Any physically connected audio sources will be here. Again, media files. Any network sources will be connected here. Any screen captures, overlays that you have. So really making it, trying to keep everything within 1 to 2 clicks of you adding your sources. So you're not really digging to find things. They should be within a click or two. So composing your shots and adding sources, pretty straightforward. And it really just comes back to the fundamentals of how do you want to compose your shot. And with that, we'll also kind of, how do you want to, so adding and composing your shots is one thing, but when it comes to when you click the live button, you want to also set everything up to kind of tell your story or chronologically move through your stream. So what I always have is my intro and outro first up, and then I'll have my camera 1 or camera 2 second, maybe a picture-in-picture if I have a guest, and any sort of presentation I have. And then I always use my intro as my outro, but you could just add it again if you wanted to move left to right. So bringing in your sources, pretty straightforward. Composing your shots, made it kind of as easy as we possibly could with the layering system and providing a preview and live view for you to just kind of always, be aware of your content coming up and being aware of your content streaming out.
Bill Memes asks, can you demonstrate bringing multiple shots from different layers online at the same time?
Let's do it. Excellent question, Bill. Let's start with a new shot. And we'll just choose this camera. And so as we're doing this, you'll see there's really no way to dive into the configurations. So what we'll have to do is open the shot properties panel. And you can do that by double clicking, or you see there's the 2 arrows right here. Let's just double click the source. So we're in the shot properties. If we go to layers, same idea, adding a shot here, we can add shots within the layers. So we're basically just using the layering system. Let's add the PTZ. And let's add, what else do I have in here that we could add? I only have the 2 cameras right now. Let's just quickly bring in a logo. Actually, let's bring in a background. So right now we have 3 layers. Let's compose a shot right quick, like a picture-in-picture. So this is overlaying everything. So let's send that to the bottom by using the up and down arrows. Let's use this camera, and we'll just on the fly scale it down, move it up. This camera, let's just on the fly scale it down a little and move it up. So on the fly, you can do a quick picture-in-picture with any available sources. Once it's available in Wirecast as connected or discoverable by Wirecast, you can on the fly make pictures-in-pictures. You can layer everything, and you're not stuck to this composition as well. Actually, we needed, sorry, let me go back to this layer. Sorry, we needed this smaller and up here, and we needed this PTZ camera bigger because this is my main presentation. Let's just do that on the fly and take that live. So you're completely in control at all times. And if you want to do a picture-in-picture, however you want to compose it, Brady Bunch style with 8 sources, whichever point works for you. Hopefully that answers your questions there, Bill.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between hardware and software encoders? We're experiencing pixelation in the Apple software encoders, but the hardware encoders text are 19 CPU ... and then so maybe you could talk a little bit about that though.
Well, so in the application itself, if it was installed on a Mac, there is a general X264 encoder, which works great. But if you're on a Mac, use the Apple specific encoder, which will essentially pull from your GPU and CPU and divide the tasks accordingly. If you're on the Windows PC, well, on our Gear 420 unit specifically, we have an NVIDIA Quadro installed, so we have NVENC encoding available. And again, hopefully to answer your question, what we're doing is whatever platform you're on, you want to specifically use that encoding. So if it didn't have the NVIDIA Quadro, it's going to kick back to the Intel and use the Intel QuickSync. So if you're using a general encoder, it's just pulling from what your available resources. If you're using a specific encoder, you're actually tasking that computer with its available resources for that task. So if that answers your question, make sure that when you go to your output settings, let's just use Facebook, and you'll see Facebook right now as the encoding. If you drop that menu down, X264 is your general encoder, but from whatever OS you have it installed on, you'll actually see that we have a second set of encoding options specific to that computer. Hopefully that answers the question. Hopefully that takes care of that pixelating problem, because it sounds like you're running that on a pretty fast computer.
Very good. I'll give you one more question now, and then I'll pass it back to you. When using audio sources such as Zoom, which use your system audio, what is the best practice to monitor the audio being output from the Wirecast, not your system audio?
Good question. Let me move this screen down a little bit. If you're the producer and it's not your show, this will work for you. You can actually monitor via headphones. If you are the single producer and it's your show, and like I'm producing my show and streaming right now, that gets pretty tricky. You'd almost want to handle that in pre-pro and make a stereo mix down below. And we can take these. You can feel free to email me this question too, because we could also walk through this workflow. But from what I'm hearing is, you just need to have a visual confirmation that the Zoom audio is coming in, but you don't want that feeding back. So you'd be in a mix minus situation there. That's a really good question. We may have to take that one offline and actually kind of run it through your workflow. And I'm happy to do that.
That's awesome. And we will make sure that you get all the questions offline, even the ones that we did address here in the presentation. All right, back to you, Shane.
Perfect. So, especially lately in the last year, Wirecast is a great encoder. You can stream to your destinations, and not everyone knows that you can record program to disk. But we've really started to use Wirecast's flexibility with features that were already available in the output settings. So yes, we can stream to over 30 of our preset destinations, and they're just located right here in the output settings. You can also RTMP or SRT to your specific streaming destination. But in the output settings here, we can also choose your recorded disk, whether it be a ProRes MOV or a smaller file size MP4 for uploading to the web. All of that is available here, and we can start stacking these destinations. So I have Facebook Live ready to go, but I could add a program to disk. Let's just go MOV. So you can start stacking your output destinations within the output settings. And that's pretty straightforward Wirecast use. But lately, we've also been having to integrate with webinars, in which when I joined the webinar today, I was actually pushing my Wirecast live output to Zoom. And to do that, we can just go to output, turn our virtual camera out and start that. And essentially what we've done is Wirecast has created a webcam for your webinar application to pull as a source. So, when you join the meeting, you just drop down the camera menu and you'll see Wirecast virtual camera as a source. So what that's done is it's kind of breaking us away from the traditional talking head or screen share and kind of go back between the two. We can fully utilize Wirecast's like production capabilities and join the Teams, the Zoom, the GoToMeeting, the WebEx meeting. And now you can have a multi-camera shoot, presentations, video playback, remote guests, and pump back into the webinar. But you can also pump to the webinar and stream out and record to disk. So really fortunate for Wirecast to have these features available and meet the expectations or the needs of of whatever delivery format you're trying or have recently been pressed into. Another note, output settings is streaming out and recording to disk, but you may have a content-rich speaker or like a guest, and although the program out being recorded in the stream is great, but it'd be really nice to ISO record that his or her individual source to disk, or maybe this is a presentation that may never happen again, and you don't want your overlays, you don't want your program mix, you want to ISO record that source. So recently we've had ISO recording available, but now we can ISO record any source in Wirecast. So if we look up to here and I go to the replay in ISO and configure, let's say add an ISO camera, you see capture source. So any physically connected camera I can have here, but any shot in Wirecast, I can also ISO record that shot as well. So we've really opened the doors of retaining you know those moments that you need to capture clean and still just dump that to disk. So along with our output settings, we have a feature-rich ISO recording, whether you're either taking your camera, your presentations, or your shots in Wirecast, and you're isolating that recorded to disk as well. On the 420, there is a physical SDI out, which is huge if you are in a production where you have a projector or a Crestron or something where you're trying to pipe out a physical feed from Wirecast. So on the 420 unit, we do have a physical SDI out. On that note, you could use NDI out. So if we went to output, if I had something connected to the SDI, it would show here. But we also have NDI output. So you can make Wirecast program out discoverable over your network via NDI, which is another huge thing for a breakout room or something where maybe you can't cord or run a cord to the next room, but it's already connected over the internet. So let's pump that program out over NDI. So pretty feature-rich output settings, record settings to meet a wide variety of productions. So, and another thing is, it seems a lot of focus is always on adding your sources, composing your shots, and choosing your output destinations. But I don't think that a lot of people go through like how the actual show or the actual production works. So before we dive in and go kind of front to back how I would run a show, let's kind of polish this show a little bit. And if we look at a few things, like that's a great title, but it's over kind of black. So let's use features and functions in Wirecast to sweeten this. Of course, we can pull in our own stuff, our own images, our own MOVs that we've created in After Effects or Photoshop. But let's stick to kind of what Wirecast has to offer here. So in this layer, if I was to add a shot and go to Media Files, Stock Media Library. This is a feature in Wirecast, which has 300,000 plus quality video, quality audio, photos, whatever you want to do. But the key thing here is royalty-free media for you to use in your streaming. So I was typing clouds. It's going to come up with a few examples. And what you do is you click the one you want. It's going to download it to your hard drive as well as plug it into your timeline. But I have one here. So let's just go ahead and add that. So here's my intro. It is a logo overlaid of a video pulled from Stock Media Library. Camera 1, camera 2. And as Paul was showing us, camera 1 is a fixed camera. It's your traditional, I need a camera to, get a different shot with this camera. I'm going to need someone to either pan tilt and compose a new shot. So that is a fixed camera. But we have a PTZ camera. And with the PTZ cameras, especially with PTZ optics, is in the source settings, we have PTZ control. So if I was to open up the PTZ window, which is right here, and connect it to that camera over NDI, I now have full control of not only pan tilt zoom, but focus, exposure, white balance, minor gains. And usually white balance and gains, you don't want to handle that in the camera. You can sweeten in Wirecast, but I would predominantly handle those configurations in the camera itself. So now that I have a PTZ cam available, we could, yes, we're in full control. I can move the camera within Wirecast, which if you don't have a cam up, or a lot of things that we've been seeing lately is the best shot is from the rig over the stage. So let's mount that PTZ up there and we'll control in Wirecast. We don't have to have a cam up on the rig. So if it's a pillar, if it's the ceiling, if it's a rig, if it's just out of reach, we can do that with the PTZ camera now and just control it in Wirecast. And I think Paul mentioned as well is we can preset shots. So what I've done here is we'll say if that's preset 1, I've set preset 2, and I've also set preset 3. So we can be jumping between shots, and we would just hide that camera movement. So if this is where we're going right now, and I wanted to move to preset number 2, I would get preset 2 number ready to go. I would head back. Now I'd hide that camera movement by going to this other camera. We'll recall that. And when that camera movement is complete, I check it in my preview window, take that live. So essentially, what's amazing is we could turn a 2-camera shoot to a 4-camera shoot or a 6-camera shoot. Just note your preset shots. And the easiest to remember is a push-pull, shot 1, shot 2 on a camera. But if you are doing, pans and you're going to a product, I would note like my preset 3 is a product shot, and just remember that. So here we have a 2-camera shoot, but essentially now I've got 4 shots on a 2-camera shoot. I've got a picture-in-picture here that I've made previously, and this is just a template available on Wirecast. Let's go ahead and add the product to that shot. So the product is network PTZ, add, and on the fly, we'll just scale that down, add that in there. Let's move that down and do some overlay right quick, crop it. And I am kind of jumping through here, but I just kind of wanted to show, how easy it is to throw a shot in, scale, position, and crop. And there we are. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna add a logo, I'm gonna add a lower third, and let's just take that live. So again, using features available in Wirecast, you can bring in so many different things, but just what's in Wirecast alone is so feature rich and so easy to use on the fly as well. So what we've done now is I feel pretty good with let's delete this shot. Feel pretty good with my show now. And what I like to do is hide behind, so what do? I like to hide behind an intro. What that does is give me a moment to click record and click stream. I'm going to double check and make sure we're set up to Facebook real quick. And we're good. So what it does is gives me a moment to click stream. I just want to confirm like a 5 count maybe. And okay, we're streaming. I am behind my intro. I'm ready to go. Take a couple stretches, drink water, whatever you've got to do. And there you are, and begin your stream. And from now, it's just composing your shots. If you're the producer listening to the speaker and, okay, let's remove the lower third. Let's go to camera 2. There we are on camera 2. Let's bring in a logo and a second lower third. Let's go to the picture-in-picture since the camera is not talking, but we wanted to show it for a minute. And now we can show the presenter talking about the camera. And if you have a presentation, bring that presentation in. Bring back up product, talk about the product a little more, wrap it up, and head back over. And like I was saying before, I simply use my intro as my outro. Pretty straightforward. So we're streaming. How do we find our stream? You could go to your Facebook page, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you're streaming to and find it. Or we could go to output and literally our streams would be listed here. So let's just go to our active broadcast. Let's check out our stream. There we go. You could, and I've done it before, is have that web page up just so you have a visual confirmation. If the counter's going, it's streaming. But in my first 4 or 5 streams, I did have YouTube or Facebook open, and I literally sat behind my intro until I saw Facebook pick it up, and I was like, okay, I'm live. But what that did is it added like a 3 to 5, sometimes depending on your internet connection, 15-second title card, and which is okay. But I just began to trust if the counter is going and I'm streaming, and I'm going to try and contain that intro to like a 5-second normal intro. So again, the more you get versed with streaming, the more times you do it. Wirecast is letting you know it's streaming. It's also letting you know like what your CPU is running at, how well we're doing here. So there's a bunch of things you could check and just be ensured or know that your stream is, one, not dropping frames. So let's just say I had a poor internet connection. Right over here, it would say dropping frames, what your output is right now, and how your CPU is working. And those 8 dropped frames is when I clicked stream, and the stream connecting to Facebook. So the very first 8 frames will probably drop. It's not dropping frames any longer, but if it was clicking into 50, 100, it would most likely be your bandwidth. Another key element in Wirecast is make sure you know your bandwidth. If you're on location, check to see what you have. Because in Wirecast, let's just say we were at a Marriott and we're on location for a shoot, and this, we're here today, and we only have 8 megabit upload speed. So you always want to take half of what's available and put Wirecast at that. So if we had 8 megabits available, this 1080p 30 frames a second at 4 megabits would be good. Let's say we had 6. You need to take that down to 3. Let's say you had 4. Let's take that down. And we could still do, I wouldn't be doing 1080 at 1.25 megabits, but you could do 720 and tune that down to 2. These are the presets. So you're not locked to the presets. We could actually change the encoder down a little bit. Again, just another flexible Wirecast, offering flexibility to whatever environment you're in, however you want to bring in your cameras, however you want to compose your shots, and whatever output needs you have. So we've really pressed making this the most flexible and easy to use. I wouldn't say easy to use, but straightforward.
So Shane, just a quick question. So are those changes that you can make on the fly when you're streaming, or just you set before?
Yeah, what you could compose shots on the fly. Okay. I wouldn't recommend changing your output. So once you're streaming, you couldn't be adding another streaming source. It's already streaming out. So right. You'd have to stop that stream to add another stream. But I could swing over, and someone's calling in from Zoom right now. I could swing over and turn virtual camera on. So that yes on some, no on streaming.
Jane, you just mentioned someone's calling in on Zoom. We've got a couple of questions here about how to bring in outside speakers and what the best practices are for bringing outside guests in and incorporating them into your stream.
That's an excellent question, and there is a host of answers. First, Rendezvous. Rendezvous is a feature within Wirecast. It's right here. So if I went to create a new session and add, it's going to generate a WebRTC link And what you're going to do is email this to, in Wirecast Pro, up to 7 guests. The guest will receive this link. They'll click it, whether it's via iPhone, Android, or PC. It will take them either to a web browser or our application and connect that device using, so if it was my iPhone, it would utilize my FaceTime cam and audio and literally bring me in as a source. But essentially what it is Rendezvous is our web conferencing app inside Wirecast. So Rendezvous is going to host all of your guests, their video and audio. And once they're in the Rendezvous dashboard, we can pop back in and add them as a source. It would say Shane or Steve, and I would add them right here. So the simplest way to bring in a guest is to use Rendezvous, send them a link, bring them in. But let's say it was Zoom and you wanted to bring a Zoom guest in. What we would do then is, this is best on a 2-monitor setup, is have the Zoom meeting open on the second monitor and literally screen capture that region and bring them in. They're going to be coming in over system audio. So you're going to have to add an audio. So you're only going to screen capture. You're only going to capture their visual. So you'd have to add another audio source, system capture, and bring them in to get their audio and video in from Zoom. And that brings up another great point, is if we were to add a system audio capture right here, let's just say it's system audio capture. Great. So here's me, and here's me talking, and I take their audio live. I have just cut my audio off. Now they can't hear me, but they can hear our guests. So what we'd want to do is same principle as a picture-in-picture, but now we're doing an audio. We're doing like a stereo mix. So in this audio source, go back to layers and add system audio into my mic. And now, whatever I switch to up here takes no effect on my audio, because my audio is bleeding. My stereo mix that I just created is playing through anything I switch to and from. So actually, that was a great question. Thank you.
And before you jump back in, one more Rendezvous related question. Will you enable Rendezvous so guests can share camera and screen simultaneously?
So the only way I've done that lately is I've sent them one Rendezvous link and I had them join through Chrome and Firefox or Mozilla. So one guest joined twice. And then I had full control of me being able to switch through their camera and their presentation. We do not have the means of sending one link to one guest to provide us 2 sources. What they would have to do is switch from camera to screen presentation themselves. That is available, but that's a great feature request, is having the ability to have a guest provide 2 sources. I will write that up today.
Awesome. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we can come back for more questions in a few minutes.
Sure. If there's any, I was gonna say, if there's any workflow questions, connectivity questions, if there's anything like that, send them. Wirecast is completely happy with, HDMI, SDI, USB, IP, NDI. It will take all of those hybrid of connections and happily use them in Wirecast. So as you can see here with this shot, let me take it back out. When you're mixing, let's say 2 to 3 different brands of cameras, you are going to want to make sure they're white balanced, because I can barely just see my skin tones off a little bit. If I come in, we get a little closer. I'm a little tanner on that camera than I am on this camera. So make sure if you're mixing brands or types, try to get that white balance as close as you can. And then honestly, at the end of the day, it really comes down to your shot composition. If I just pan back out real quick, it comes, we've got all this great gear. We have these awesome cameras. Everything's available to us. But at the end of the day, it really comes back down to the fundamentals of video and audio. Thank you for the suggestion of turning the mic around. It sounds so much better, and I learned something today. Also, a well-lit shot. I have 2 soft light boxes here. As lighting, the camera can't do the lighting for you. So even if you have a great camera, if it doesn't have the specifics that it needs, it's not going to pull a great shot. So, with all the great stuff available, just remember it really does come back to the fundamentals of a good shot composition, camera placement, trying to break away from the old webcams and actually compose a shot, using the PTZ cameras, which I just think is almost a fundamental workflow. Even if that PTZ camera, it's on a tripod, so technically I could have a cam up behind it as well, but I don't have a cam up here, so the PTZ control in Wirecast is just key for my production. So just keep that in mind. Yes, Wirecast paired with Wirecast gear offers you a hybrid of connections, super reliable platform, easy to connect the devices, super flexible on all of your output destinations, whatever means you're trying to get your message out to, webinar, social, web page, wherever you're going. And just all of these things are available, but just remember the fundamentals as well, and kind of tying it all together. And I'm happy to iron out any workflow all day long. So any questions you have on workflow, down to lighting and audio as well, we can pull someone in who does it way better than I do. But there's so many resources out there. And just for today, the point is having Wirecast paired with Wirecast gear offers you that flexibility, whether it be bringing in whatever type of camera, whether it be how to compose your shots, and choosing your output destinations.
Awesome. Well, we do have a number of workflow and other related questions here. Scott Fowler is asking, will Wirecast accept signals from computer, not standard resolutions like 1920 by 1200? He says he tried this and signals showed up in Blackmagic Media Express, but when importing into Wirecast, it shut down the software every time.
I would have to ask what you were running Wirecast on, what were the computer specs on that computer? That and what delivery means. Was that a physical connection? Were you pulling that over IP? Were you pulling an NDI connection? Another great workflow question. I need a little more specifics on that. It sounds like if I was running this on a MacBook Air, the ceiling's low. If I tried to pull in something, even 720, that might be the needle on the haystack for that MacBook Air. It sounds like that's what may have happened. I'd like to know more. Feel free to reach out to me and I'd happily iron that one out.
Okay, Scott said it was a brand new Mac laptop with a Blackmagic Quad HDMI recorder.
Oh, well, that sounds like it should have worked fine. I wonder if it was a driver issue. Again, reach out to me. I'd love to iron that one out. It sounds like you have all the right pieces. Even though Media Express was able to pull it in, that's interesting that Wirecast didn't recognize it after that, because it's usually 1, 2, 3, connect the Blackmagic, use Media Express to verify the source, bring it into Wirecast. Super straightforward workflow. Sounds like we got a hiccup there. I'd love to iron that out.
Okay, well, this may be a related question then. Does Wirecast share its load between the processor and the graphics card, or is it all fully dependent on processor power?
Excellent. So if we were to use, let's say, the 300 series where it does not have a dedicated GPU, yes, it would be all CPU. In the 420 unit where we've added the NVIDIA Quadro, if you do nothing, it will kind of pull available resources. And you could actually load the 420 up a lot before it starts getting into the 40, 50% usage area. And once you get there, yes, that's where we can start dividing tasks. If I was to go to the output settings, let's say I want the gear to pull in 6 NDI sources. So if I'm doing that, I had better hop in here and not use my general encoder and start using the GPU itself. So general use, the Wirecast is going to pull available resources until you task Wirecast with an Apple-specific encoder. If it doesn't have a dedicated GPU on a Windows platform, Intel QuickSync. If it has the dedicated GPU, like the NVIDIA using NVINC, you may task CPU and GPU. So just know that generally Wirecast is just going to pull available resources until you task it.
Okay, Eric Nisley is asking, if you add the same camera to multiple layer and groupings, how much more resources? Again, we got a resources questions. How much more resources is Wirecast going to be using?
That's that's a really good question. Once Wirecast has encoded the source or connected, that's it. It's not, so if I was to put 4 of these right here, I am not quadrupling the encode. Wirecast is only pulling the one source. So I could just keep layering that same source over and over and over. And Wirecast is just like, hey, so it's okay that you are adding this source 4 times. If we look right down here, let's take it live and just, if I look down here, Wirecast does not mind that I've used the same source 4 times. Didn't do anything. So once that source is brought in or encoded, you're good. You could add it 16 times. But if they're each source, now we're starting to add to the encoding. So a single source added multiple times, it's 1 encode.
So we have a question from Rajesh, Reggie, sorry if I said that wrong, but it's about picture-in-picture. And it just seems like a good moment for a picture-in-picture question. He's asking about bringing about remote guests and picture-in-picture. For picture-in-picture, can guests be remote or in? And what are the setup requirements for remote guests to bring them in a picture-in-picture setting?
So let's say that I used Rendezvous and I pulled in 4 guests, and there's me. So that this only provides the connection to the guests. So once they're here, we have them as sources in Wirecast. So let's just say that camera is our Rendezvous guests. So you wouldn't want to do this on the fly, although you can. You would just simply add 1 shot, and let's say it's this camera, and hop into the layers, and again, compose your shot as needed. So let's just say I'm the panelist, and these are my guests. So again, we're just back to, how do you want to compose your shot? Guest number 1, let's put them up here. Guest number 2. And sorry, I'm using the same source. It would be great if I had 3 guests coming in. And plus, feel free. Email me, call me, and let's do this live. Let's bring me in as a guest or you in as a guest, and let's do this. So maybe just a quick example right now is I have, the instructor and 3 guests bringing in. So it just depends how you want to compose your shot.
All right. Well, that was a lot of information in just under 45 minutes, Shane. Thanks so much. And we do have a lot more questions in the Q&A. As always, once again, we will make sure that the speakers get all those questions and can respond to you offline.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. It's really great, especially for me, to hear about the new features in Rendezvous. We're all about remote production now, and I'm all about, as Eric knows, I'm all about repurposing content. So I love the ISO recording feature. That's just right in my wheelhouse.
It's key.
It's great stuff.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Eric.
You are welcome. Thank you. And a reminder to our attendees that at the end of the workshop today, in about 90 minutes, we'll be drawing names at random to win a number of prizes, including Telestream Wirecast Pro.